Welcome back to The Roommates. Chapter 7 The Toe Incident. Jason lay down on his bed. Their bed, he reminded himself, and stared at the ceiling. Had he done something wrong tonight? He asked himself. Was it okay for him to have fun? It was definitely not okay for him to have drooled over Amanda, that much he knew. For a moment he considered blaming it on the beer, but then decided that the only person he was deluding was himself. Matt would tell him to go for it, of course, meaning to go for her. But Matt had been the only one who hadn't liked Beth. Matt remembered a Jason before Beth. Jason the womanizer. But that guy was long gone. Did he really want him to come back? The others had been fine. Eliza and Jonathan seemed like they could be fun, although they both seemed distracted by other thoughts. Jonathan had revealed his previous career as an attorney at dinner, which had surprised no one except Amanda. Maybe Jason wouldn't have to worry about her after all, he ruminated. Maybe she'd wisely decide that Jonathan was the better bet. Against his better judgment, he found himself hoping that that wouldn't be the case. At least they all have jobs and might pay their rent on time. With their help, he could drag out his return to work, although he really should have been back months ago. He was certain that he would not be welcome at his previous job, based on the incoherent rant that he had hurled at his boss after the accident. They might forgive him, of course, but who could be expected to do that? He had only said what he had felt, anyway. It was too much, and not socially acceptable, but he had meant it. He had hated it there. So, he would need to find something else. He didn't want to live with these people forever, after all. On this particular morning, Jonathan really didn't feel like getting up. He hadn't been sleeping well, even though he had brought his massive bed over from his old apartment. Something about this new house was bothering him, but he couldn't really put his finger on it. Maybe he shouldn't blame the house, he thought. He had experienced a fair amount of change recently, and it was natural that he would feel unsettled. But the dreams of Cecilia really hadn't been helping. This time they had been in the woods together, hiking. That was how he knew it was a dream. In the real world, Cecilia would have laughed at the idea of going hiking. Nevertheless, there they were, deep in the woods, jokingly taking photos of each other as they dipped their toes in a freezing stream. She was wearing her favorite sundress, the red one, and a wide-brimmed hat more suited to beach lounging than hiking. She was calling out to him to come across the river, when she slipped. He had awoken in a panic, covered in sweat. He had no idea what it meant, but he was sure he wanted to forget it. He and Cecilia were through. He had ended it. There was nothing more to say. But he knew it was obvious from the way he replied to Eliza the other day that he had better figure out something to say. Today, he had 15 deliveries to focus on. That wouldn't have been hard, except that these deliveries were part of the covert courier program that his company operated. Instead of just rocking up and dropping off the packages, Jonathan had to park his bike blocks away, change clothes repeatedly, linger outside of various stores, and not wear a helmet. Although the first parts were exhausting, it was the last bit that really worried him. Not wearing a helmet in this city was tantamount to suicide. Of course, delivering secret packages might also be tantamount to suicide, but he was fairly confident that nothing that exciting was actually changing hands. Anyway, he had a long day ahead of him and he had to be home by 7. Eliza had invited him to come out to a bat survey that evening. Jonathan wasn't confident that he wanted to participate, but it sure beats staying at home with Amanda and Jason. So he had agreed. Besides, how often did one get invited to go out and count bats? Apparently Eliza did it routinely as part of her job, but he certainly didn't know anyone else who was doing it. Now that he thought about it, however, he realized that maybe she had just been extending the offer out of politeness. How embarrassing that he had accepted so readily. Here's hoping I'm wrong, he thought, as he changed into his first outfit of the day. Eliza was thankful that her transition had gone so well. There had been radio silence from Luke, and relations were improving with Amanda and Jason. She was still uncertain about Peter, though. He seemed to spend all of his time either at work or holed up in his room, presumably playing computer games. Why he would bother to move into a shared house only to isolate himself to such a degree was a mystery to her. Maybe next week she would ask him about it. Maybe. Today, she was focused on the results of her test. She had gone to the convenience store last week, well in advance of being able to do anything with them, and purchased 3 different brands. 3 would provide a solid result, she figured. 1 test was not enough to confirm or deny the pregnancy. These things were notoriously wrong. She had once read an article about a woman who got a negative result, went out binge drinking to celebrate, and only later realized the damage that she had done. Best not to go that route, Eliza had told herself, which is why she had settled on 3. She took 2 deep breaths and another gulp of soda before she closed the bathroom door. Test number 1. Thumbs up for a minus sign, she thought as she slipped the completed test into its gestation sleeve. Although she had initially decided to wait to take the second test, Eliza now decided that was a bad idea. What if it came back positive and she had to wait 3 minutes to find out it was false? She could have a heart attack in that amount of time, she realized. She immediately completed the second one, setting it neatly, but with shaking hands, next to the first. Apparently, she was hoping for a not in front of the word pregnant for this test. Please. Precisely 1 minute later, there was a knock on the door. Didn't these men know not to bother a woman who was in the bathroom? Jesus. Eliza, hey, Eliza, the voice asked. Eliza struggled to identify the voice, but was at a loss. She'd only known these men for 5 days, after all. Yes, she replied in a strained voice, trying once again, for the nth time in so many days, to sound natural. Can I help you? There's a guy here to see you. Luke? Yeah, Luke. Just wanted to let you know. The voice disappeared and was replaced by muted chatter and laughter occurring in the main living room. Eliza sighed. Impeccable timing, as always, she thought, as she turned back around and saw that the waiting was over. Calmly, she took the 3rd test out of the box and broke it in half. Peter had just been told off by his psychiatrist. He wasn't actually sure that psychiatrists were allowed to behave that way towards their patients, but he knew he deserved it anyway. He had in no way completed the brief that had been given to him. He had lived in a shared house with 4 other people for nearly a month, and yet hadn't managed to engage in a single real conversation with any of them. His sister had been similarly unamused. So today was the day. Today, he would talk to Eliza. Unsure of how to approach her, Peter decided that the casual, "We're in the kitchen together, how about that?" ploy would be the best. So he set about making a complicated sandwich, which involved a fair amount of slicing and dicing. His efforts at locating clean plates and cutlery were hampered, however, almost immediately. Jason had asked that they all be willing to take out the trash, but what about doing the dishes? This place was the pits, especially now that Amanda had begun cooking her ghastly and absurdly costly concoctions. Not having spoken to her, Peter was unaware that these were test recipes for her influencing. She simply thought she was very hungry with extremely unusual taste. Although he was astute enough to notice that she was quite small for someone with such a large appetite. He was murmuring about this to himself when Eliza entered the kitchen. "Sorry, what did you say?" Eliza asked distractedly as she set down her groceries. "Oh, hi, Eliza. I was just talking about having a large appetite. You know, some women eat a lot. Not you, of course, but other women. You know, like other women who are really tall, or other women who are fat, or who are pregnant." Peter trailed off as he realized the impact his words were having on his audience. His palms, already sweaty from his anticipated contact with a woman, turned soggy and pale. He had completely ruined this opportunity, he knew. Turning back to his sandwich, he picked up his knife quickly, and with wide eyes, watched in slow motion as it slipped out of his hands and landed, tip down, in his big toe. Amanda heard the screams from the other room. She had been home all day, of course, because she was now unemployed, and Mason wouldn't agree to ditch his job to hang out with her. She had been avoiding Peter, though. What could she possibly have to say to a dishwasher repairman? Or was it washing machine repairman? Or maybe he was a plumber. She wasn't really sure about the specifics, but she was sure about her social tactics. He couldn't really offer her anything, so she would only provide cursory chatter to him. Screaming bloody murder, however, required a response greater than cursory chatter, especially when it was commingled with a female voice. Was that Eliza? Amanda rushed into the kitchen to find a chaotic scene. Peter was static on the floor, legs and arms akimbo, screeching at the top of his lungs. Eliza was matching his shrieking pitch on pitch, but was also desperately trying to get as far away as possible from the bloody knife which was lying in the middle of the linoleum. Scattered across the floor around the knife was an assortment of rye flour, flax seeds, cucumber slices, and pastrami. Amanda quickly surveyed the scene and gave instructions. Eliza, get a bandage or an old t-shirt, right now. Peter, shut the hell up. We're taking you to the ER, and do not worry, I will find your toe.